The objective of the organization, We the World, is to facilitate cooperation on a global scale amongst groups and individuals dedicated to implementing solutions to the many challenges we face on the planet at this time.
Welcome to the 11 Days of Global Unity Summit 2023. My name is Jenna Larson, and I am coordinator of the Economic Justice Campaign for We the World, as well as filling many other roles for We the World. Today, I'm excited that we are joined by Shannon CrossBear and Christopher Oquist and Arianna Antone Ramirez, who will be talking about interdependence. For the full 11-day summit schedule, you can register for free by going to we.net. Then you can participate in the after panel public discussions and see replays of the recordings. There you can also contribute to support us at We the World by going to we.net. Now let's bring on my co-host, Rick Ulfik. Rick Ulfik is the founder of We the World at we.net and the co-creator of 11 Days of Global Unity. Welcome to the broadcast, Rick Ulfik.
Thank you, Jana. And thank you all so much for joining us for this important discussion of interdependence at our 11 Days of Global Unity Summit. So here's some background information about Interdependence Day. Every year during 11 Days of Global Unity, we celebrate Interdependence Day on September 12th. We started in 2002 at the World Summit on Sustainable Development in Johannesburg, South Africa, where our dear friend Arianna Antone led the delegates in a convocation establishing the annual Interdependence Day. Arianna is an indigenous elder from the Arctic Circle. And for the launch of 11 Days of Global Unity on September 12th, we created the Global Declaration of Interdependence, which was signed by Jane Goodall and thousands of others. You can see it and sign it by going to we.net/declaration. For me, conscious interdependence is best exemplified by the wisdom of indigenous peoples around the world. Now it is my pleasure to introduce Shannon CrossBear. Shannon CrossBear is a beautiful, spiritual, powerful Ojibwe Irish woman. Her mother, Mary Elizabeth, instilled in her a deep appreciation of the ancestral arts. Her father, Earl Sylvester, shared the teachings of generations and reminded her that she came from the stars. As the coordinator of We the World's Interdependence campaign, Shannon is on the path of reclamation, restoration, and regeneration. Welcome to the broadcast, Shannon CrossBear.
Thanks, Rick. It's really good to be here. I mean, Indaway Maganak. I just greeted you in our language, which means hello, and I'm greeting you as my relatives.
Thank you. Could you please introduce Christopher and Arianna, who will be joining us for this discussion, and please share, all of you, about what is important to you about interdependence. Thanks.
Sure, Rick. In fact, it's really, I love that you asked that question, and I love that we're not only interdependence right here and right now, but we're intergenerational. And so I think that that's really exciting. So, so first I'm gonna, it's hard to do this introduction in a way because these are my relatives, right? So I'm introducing you. I'm the grandma here in the group, and I'm introducing my grandson. And I would introduce him in one way, but he also has the work that he's done in the world. So I'm going to share a little bit about that. So Chris is enrolled. He's an enrolled member of the Grand Portage Ojibwe tribe. And he is a housing development coordinator for the village in San Francisco. And that's a Native-led initiative that's dedicated to improving the lives of over 18,000 American Indians that are living in San Francisco. So, and he's only been there for a year, which kind of breaks my heart because I was used to having him around me. But he is from Minneapolis, Minnesota. And he's very aware of the issues that are facing the urban Indians and the generational trauma that has really been caused by many of the different policies over time. So he's right now he's trying to working to develop affordable housing in both San Francisco and in Northern California. So he did get his bachelor's degree from Augsburg. We were all very proud of him when that happened. And he has years of youth service experience. So Christopher is also connected to students through, student group focused on culture and identity, but also a member of the All Nations Drum Group and a traditional dancer and a ceremonial caretaker. So very proud of you, grandson. And then my wonderful in my life, Chris's partner, Arianna Antone Ramirez, and she comes to us from a different nation, from Tohono O'odham Nation, and but she was born and raised in San Francisco. So you can kind of tell how Chris got there. And she grew up in a very strong urban American Indian community, and she spent her early life participating in the community youth programs, Friendship House, Native American Health Center, and she also graduated from Augsburg University in Minneapolis. And she had a double major in American Indian Studies and Political Science. So right now, Arianna is currently working as a health policy analyst at the California Consortium for Urban Indian Health. And she's passionate about community and advocacy and making policy accessible to the communities that are going to be most impacted. So I'm really, really glad to have welcomed both of them to this intergenerational conversation around interdependence. And so just a little thoughts before, and Chris and Arianna, jump in whenever you feel like jumping in. That's kind of the way we're going to do it here, because I really am on this path of how do we kind of do things in a way that is culturally congruent, right? So, so when I think about interdependence, it was interesting because when I came to know about We the World and the work that We the World was doing, I was on board right away because it made sense to me. And what makes sense to me, of course, is this idea that everything's connected. And it wasn't something that I thought about. It was just a part of our way of being. Like, that's just the way that we think about things, right? And so so I can't see one thing not being connected to the other. And so the world had these 11 campaigns, and I looked at all of the 11 campaigns and I thought to myself, all these campaigns to create a world where we are aware of our connections and really doing things in a way that benefits the whole as opposed to just the individual. And so so then when I was thinking about that, I thought, well, how can you can't have a healthy we world if we don't have economic justice, for example. We can't have economic justice if we don't really pay attention to what's happening with the environment, because economic justice and the environment are connected, right? And we can't be healthy if we don't include our physical health, our mental health, our emotional health, and our spiritual health. So when I think about interdependence, that's what I think about, is how all of those things are connected, that one cannot happen without the other. And so how do we really approach how we live in the world with each other in a healthy way, in that, with that interdependence? So yeah, so when Christopher, what do you think of when you think of interdependence?
Yeah, I would definitely say that I agree with a lot of what you've just said about just trying to understand where we exist within the world. And I think when it comes to interdependence, it's realizing that you know, we all are significant to a larger cause. We all have our own role, we have our own responsibilities to try and provide a safe and sustainable world for all of those around us. And that role can take many different um, faces. It does remind me one time when I was helping some community members back in Minnesota. They were getting ready to do a ceremony, and I remember the chief was telling us that when he was a younger man, he took on the role of just cleaning out the latrines, and everyone was praising him and was, feeding him really good that night because they needed to be cleaned. And that was something that no one wanted to do. It's not something that people were really thinking about, but it was just a task that needed to get done so that everyone can be able to use the latrines without feeling uncomfortable or sickened. And that's one way that he helped take care of the rest of the camp. Was one of the roles that he thought needed to be done, and he took care of it, and it helped progress the ceremony in a good way. And that's one of the teachings that he was telling us, is that, sometimes even cleaning out a latrine can do a lot more for the community than thinking that you need to be doing more for the community. It's doing something and being active to make sure that everyone else is comfortable. So that's what I think about when it comes to the interdependence, is that we have our roles, and these roles sometimes are not very transparent. Sometimes it does take some creativity to think that, there's something that's missing. There's something that's missing that could help all of us. And it's up to us to try and figure out what that is, or to be able to find someone who can do it in a functional way.
How about you, Ari? What do you think about?
Yeah, I think for interdependence, what it makes me think is like everyone, I feel like we're all our best selves when we work together. And yeah, like I think of some examples in like my personal life, especially having just had a baby. It, like, you hear a lot of people say it takes a village, and I feel like that's very true, especially like, for example, going to powwows. Like sometimes I need someone to hold the baby if I'm gonna go dance or go get food or something like that. But then like I would do the same thing for other people as well, other powwow moms or other moms who are busy, and like their a kid's walking by, I'm like, hey, where's your mom? Do you need help like tying your hair? Like, what do you need help with? And just that like coming together to help each other out. And then we're all our best selves. Everyone has a good time. Everyone's able to enjoy the day. And so that's what I think about in my personal life. And then in work, I think the same thing, like for policy and advocacy, a lot of times pushing a bill that you want to get passed, you have to build a coalition, and there goes that interdependence. Like our organization is going to benefit from this, yours is going to benefit from this. How can we work together? Who do we need to talk to? How can we like use our mutual connections to get this passed? And I think that's just like another example of interdependence and how it affects work and life at home and everything in between.
Thanks. Thanks. Yeah, I was thinking about that today. In fact, right before we're having this conversation, I was in another conversation that was with the National Child Traumatic Stress Network. And I do work with them, and the conversation that they were having was around decolonization and kind of how it affects the the work that they were doing in trauma-informed kind of work. And it was interesting because in the course of that conversation, we talked about all the aspects, like everything affects everything else. And that we were talking about the fact that right now in the country, we're having a real challenge with mental health in terms of meeting the need. And for those that are working in those fields, that are helping fields for other human beings, and finding secondary traumatic stress being a really big thing, and people are leaving the field. And so it's like, well, how are you applying all the things that you're trying to get other people to do so to yourself, like self-care, right? And how big that is. And so everything's related. What happens to somebody else happens to us. And I think that's the whole idea for me of that interdependence, is finding out, like, Christopher, you're working, I mean, you're working in housing now, but housing is not just about housing, right? It's about people's lives, and it contributes to their health and their well-being. And so, can you talk about what you think about, like, if you think about interdependence and you think about housing, what kinds of things maybe affect housing? What are you finding out?
Yeah, I would say that. So working here at Friendship House, it is a treatment facility that uses Native American practices to help those who are homeless or those who need um, uh, drug and substance treatment. And I think it was a really good start for, it is an organization that has been around for about 50, 60 years, providing resources to American Indians in San Francisco and the Greater Bay Area. And it is also a holistic model that is used widely across the United States. And so housing is one of the things that the founder had thought of, was that there needs to be housing that our clients, once they graduate the program, can go live at, so that they are in a facility that is close to the environment that they were just surrounded by, the American Indian community. And so one of our focuses is making sure that when it comes to our community, regardless of what tribe clients or other American Indians may identify as, there's still a community that supports them. And so one of the things that they do believe in is that through community, like rehabilitation can work through culture. And one of the large aspects of, of our culture is being around our community, being around our practices. And so that is one of the things that housing has kind of come up, is that we need housing that's not spread out throughout San Francisco. We need housing that is close and nearby to the community that we are actively and currently serving. And so the other, and then of course, one of the other major issues when it comes to, or not issues, but one of the social problems that we deal with when it comes to housing is the areas in which development can happen in San Francisco is close by to active users that are on the street. They are close to homeless encampments where a lot of drug use and substance abuse is happening. And it seems like our city has kind of allowed that to continue in those areas, as long as it stays concentrated in those areas. And so making sure that our community members or our clients who are here don't have to be forced into an environment like that, to be living in an environment like that where substance harm and abuse is just so prevalent. And homelessness is a large issue, especially when it comes to uh, climate crisis, one of the things that we have been focusing on with our housing development is trying to build climate resiliency centers. You know, temperatures keep rising, the ocean levels keep rising. We need to be able to find a way to house people in areas that could be at risk, but make sure that they're not too at risk when it comes to whether or not a natural disaster occurs. Trying to find solar is another source that we have been looking into. California is making a lot of changes when it comes to our dependency on oil and other gas resources. And so they're trying to make the shift into electric vehicles as well as shared vehicles. And then, of course, solar panels. And our housing department is trying to focus on where we can use solar panels, where we can try and build up our resiliency centers that will be backed up in case of emergency. So we're very much looking into a solar panel or a solar brand building, and we're actually in the process of looking at refurbishing this building that we're currently in so that it can be zero emission, which is another thing that, you know, we're trying to work on so that if there is a catastrophic event, our community can have a place to go to where they can have access to running water, to power and electricity, in case those resources get cut off in their homes. So these are just some of the things that we're kind of looking at so that we can have a space for our community to come to when things might go wrong. And we're kind of building up and anticipating for things to go wrong. And just one last thing that we're kind of working on when it comes to climate resiliency is educational resources. Especially when it comes to electric vehicles, there needs to be people who operate and know how to change and fix up the charging machines that electric vehicles use. And so that's one of the things that we are looking at doing, is trying to provide educational resources so that community members can know how to fix those things, because that's where, you know, the job market will soon turn to, is people who can maintain and build those devices. And then, of course, trying to make sure that they are located near our community centers so that electric charging is offered at our buildings.
Yeah, that's great, Chris. I love hearing about what you're doing. It's just, it's great. And I'm, you know, it makes me think, just in that, you know, as you were talking about that, it makes me think about all the connections of the dots, right? It's about climate. It's about human beings who are, you know, in this place of need at any particular time. I love the terminology resiliency centers. That is so, you know, it really tells us what we've done is we've all been resilient, right? And I was thinking about housing and the importance of housing, because one time your uncle Chris called me and he was telling me about a particular road on a particular tribal nation in northern Minnesota. And he was doing some firefighting there, and he called me up and he said, I want to describe this road to you. Okay. And this is an infrastructure issue, right? And a housing issue. He said, Mom, he said, I get it. And I said, well, what do you mean you get it? And he goes, I get it now, Mom. He says, I'm looking down this road and there is a Head Start, early childhood education, Head Start. And then the next building is a grade school. And then the next building is a high school. And the next building is a detention center. And the next building is a jail. And the plot after that is a cemetery. He said, what is the message, even in the infrastructure of our housing, that we are giving? So cradle to grave, is that what we want to do? You know, so I think about how all these things that impact us, right? And impact you and now your daughter and generations. So and Ariana, I know with the work that you're doing around health policy, that's one of those things too. If we don't have the policies in place, right, then things continue. We can have all the good intentions to help people. I was just talking to other people about this. We have all the good intentions of helping people, but if we have a system that says, no, you can't get that kind of help, then it's a policy issue, right? So can you talk a little bit about that, about the work that you're doing? If I'm not too distracted by Indana's. Okay.
She's definitely wanting to say what she has to say right now. But yeah, I think that like I said, that addressing those needs like through policy, it definitely does circle back to that theme of interdependence. Like you can't really get a lot done unless, like, you know, for example, there's the whole Medi-Cal, well, yeah, in California, the state insurance is called Medi-Cal, but that whole redetermination right now, there's all these numbers of how many American Indians are going to lose their health coverage because of that. And so that takes like the state agency talking to within their own agencies, because there's several that work on that, but then it takes them talking to tribal health programs. And then that's where my org kind of comes in and to say like, hold on, there's that niche there, because it's not just tribal health programs. Not all American Indians in California live on reservations, though many do. There's a lot living in urban centers as well. And so that's where we come in, representing the clinics that we represent. But then like right there, I've already named like 5, 6 different parties that all need to be involved interdependently to get to that goal of making sure that our people still have health coverage and are able to go to the doctor. Yeah. I was just thinking about that too, kind of at the beginning of our conversation, because a lot of people aren't really aware of how many of our population are in urban areas. Like, you know, even Christopher, I was surprised. Did it say 15 or 18,000 in San Francisco? How many?
I believe the number is, yeah, around 18,000.
Wow.
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, and I know that, you know, it was policy that led to that. It was policy that then led to a big influx into urban communities in the late 60s, from the 50s, 60s, and 70s. And so, so now we have generations of about 80% of our population live in urban settings. So yeah, all of those things. So all of those things come together and create this this web of, we need to be able to talk about health policy, even in our housing policies, about not just what is healthy, but like you said, how are we preparing for those times when we may be in situations where we have to do what we did recently with locking down in a sense ourselves, so that we can control certain diseases that are coming into play. So all of those things kind of lead to our interdependence, and thinking about in these 11 days that we're embarking upon, which are really, these campaigns are all year round, but in these 11 days, we try to highlight those 11 different campaigns that really speak to being into a world of not I, but we. And Chris, you talked about that quite a bit in terms of, you know, what was important about community, right? That what creates a safe space is not just the, you know, the building being cool or the building protecting you from the elements, but what's in the community of that building that supports healthy life, right? So yeah, great. So yeah, I'm so Rick, what has it been like kind of listening to this conversation?
Oh, very interesting. And yeah, thanks, Jenna, for joining us too. part of that, one of the things that I've been thinking about, because, you know, housing, community, all of those things, health are, you know, essential. And then I was thinking about the other things going on, like the environment that we're living in and the relationship of people to the natural world, or the world that's the not the human world, you know. And I usually think of the let's say the indigenous relationship to the environment as being sustainable over millennia, right? So people think of, you know, let's say they're doing fishing or some other things. They're doing it in a way that is sustainable, so they're not going to overfish or overkill buffalo or that kind of thing. And the same thing has to do with other ways that humans treat the environment. And it seems like humanity has gone away from that way of thinking, where it's a kind of a balance of nature, you know. So we have all these, you know, fossil fuel extraction, other kinds of extraction, and it doesn't seem like it's sustainable. And in fact, it's leading to climate disruption and all of this stuff. But I'm just wondering if Shannon or anyone else wants to talk about the relationship of indigenous peoples thinking about ongoing sustainability that could last and has lasted millennia, and now it's getting disrupted, right?
Yeah, thanks, Rick. I think it's two things come to my mind when you're talking. One is interdependence, and the other is the laws, what they call natural law, right? And it's a law of reciprocity. And what that means is that that's what keeps things in balance. And that actually has so much to do with why our world is out of, at least the way that I've been taught, is the way that our world is so out of balance, right? So, you know, I was looking just at this background I have behind me. You know, these are some of the medicines that are available outside of my door, right? And but they're not available outside of my door unless the bees are healthy, because the bees are the pollinators, right? So, and kind of a lesson that I learned in our communities from early on is that there's always opportunities for reciprocity, and that's what helps keep it in the balance. And it's not about an equal give and take, because that sometimes is not the case. So, for example, if I'm going to take the life of one of our relatives, our non-human relatives, right? Then I need to acknowledge that that's a gift that's been given, right? And I'm not going to give a life in return, because that's the reciprocity, but the reciprocity can even be in intent. And what has happened is that those that don't understand that, they only understand that they're taking, right? If the terminologies in most of the indigenous languages for those that came to this continent were the takers, the fat takers, the people with the long knives. They all describe somebody who took without understanding those laws of nature. And we're all subject to the laws of nature. It is more than you, more than I. It's it always confused me because in a Western construct, when we talked about these things, they would talk about science. Well, it has to be scientific. It has to be, but what is more scientific than nature, than what we see every day? It gets, that to think that we would not be in this shape, or that we could get out of our current world conditions in a heartbeat is not what we've been taught. What we've been taught is that's those things like 7 generations. It's like it took us a long time to get here. Now we're here at this moment in time where we have some choices to make. And those choices are either we're going to live in a world that sustains life or not. And if we're going to live in a world that sustains life, then we have a lot of work to do, right? But as Christopher said, we each have our part. It can be overwhelming when we think about all the work that we have to do. And sometimes when we get overwhelmed, we just want to go, forget it. It's too much, right? But if we take our piece, whether it be, being the speaker for the water, whether it be making sure human beings have the dignity that they need, right? And making sure that when we're doing housing, that we're doing it in a sustainable way. There's a way to build that's sustainable. There's a way to, and having those things in place that, such as policy, that help guide people so that they know how to do that. All of those things fit together. And I think from an Indigenous perspective, it's not about learning to live on the earth, it's learning to live with the earth.
Mm.
And that only happens through relationships. So when I introduced myself and said, Anin Indue Maganek, I was not just talking to these relatives, I was talking to all relatives, all life that's around us. And, and I think, Christopher said, and, that those ceremonies, that was a part of providing that place for those ceremonies, because we're human beings and we forget, we forget that we belong to each other. We forget that we are part of the earth. We forget. So those kinds of things, those opportunities, or even this, to be able for somebody to attend this, to hear this and to think about this, those are opportunities to kind of recalibrate ourselves, right? And remember who we are as human beings, that we have a special purpose above and beyond our individual purposes. We have a special purpose as caretakers of this earth. And how, I'm spending my life learning how to be a good relative. Sometimes I do well, sometimes not so much. But yeah.
Yeah. So now that we have talked this out for a while, I'm just wondering, can we have a call to action? What are you calling for? How would each of you like people to take action so that we can have more of a sustainable society going forward? We could start with Shannon and then go to.
Well, you know what?
Lisa.
I'd like to start the other way, Rick. So,
Sure,
yeah, I'm gonna ask
Arianna.
Ariana what she
Good,
would like to see.
thank you. That's great.
I think my call to action would just, I think it would be to listen more, for everyone to just listen more instead of just like going full steam ahead with your own idea. Sometimes that's great, but sometimes someone may have not a better idea, but maybe a more efficient idea or an idea that works well with your idea. So I think just like listening more to each other, and like Shannon was talking about as well, to the environment as well, not just like to other humans. Um,
So listening more, that sounds good.
How about you, Christopher?
Yeah, I kind of want to build off of something that Ariana just said. Um, like if you have an idea, you need to be able to share with someone who'll be able to listen, but also listen to other people's ideas. Because as I said before, like we all have our role, and when we're moving forward, like the difference between interdependent thinking and independent thinking. When you're doing that independent thinking, you're thinking that you might be at the center of this entirety of this idea or the organization, and thinking that, like, well, if it's my idea, I'm the one that should be leading it out. I should be the one making decisions and executing whatever my decisions may be. Interdependent thinking is realizing that, what, you may have came up with a really, with a brilliant idea, but there may be some things that you have not thought about that another person may be able to provide. And yeah, you need to listen to that. You need to hear it out before making the decision. And also to think that, what, maybe I shouldn't be making the decisions. I may have started an idea that might have started a movement that progressed towards a goal and achievement, but it takes everyone to make it happen. It takes more than just myself to make things possible. And going forward with that mentality of just, what, I'm not the center of this. I'm a part of the nucleus, the nucleus of what this idea or whatever the goal is. But you are just there to also be supporting and helping other people attain and achieve whatever your goals or objectives may be.
And my, oh, go ahead, Rick.
No, I was just thinking, so that means we each are the center of the universe.
We each are. So when I was thinking about the call to action, I guess my call to action would be going back to what I was saying about 7 generations. As you're walking through this world, as you're making decisions, as you're working and living and loving and being sad and all of those things, but think about, what am I doing now and how might that impact 7 generations? 7 generations. If we thought about that in that way, then some of the decisions, even the current decisions, as we decide how we're going to, meet our needs, our transportation needs, our communication needs, we need to be thoughtful. It took a long time. Used to be sometimes in communities, sometimes it takes, years to make a decision. And we, from a colonized way, that's horrible because it's all about, let's get it done now. But sometimes the gravity of the consequences of that decision require time and thoughtfulness. And so I think, for a lot of our world now, that the value has been efficiency, but maybe the value needs to be a different value. And that value is sustainability, resiliency, ongoing kind of things. Because I'm here to tell you, as far as I know, to this day, nobody gets out of this life alive. And as such, the legacy that we have is brought down in the generations to come. And now our Western science, with things like epigenetics and the study of blood memory, years and years our indigenous elders would tell us, you have blood memory. Your ancestors are still with you. They exist. And, and from a Western construct that was like thought to be, a little bit out there, so to speak. Well, here now they know that what our ancestors said about blood memory was true, because it is in our genetics. Our ancestors, I carry that Christopher carries that, Yana carries that, Rick carries that. And, you know, Indonis carries that. And so thinking about how that continues. So that would be my call to action. Make your decisions based on the next 7 generations. And we will see a different outcome in 7 generations. And I want to thank those 7 generations that came before us, because we would not be here having this conversation if it wasn't for the sacrifices and the thoughtfulness that they had for us. So, Chimigwet, thank you.
Yeah, thank you. And for me, that's the whole idea of conscious interdependence. So people can realize that whatever they're doing, even if it seems like a very small action, it can have and probably will have ramifications for 7 generations or more.
Mm.
So thank you. This has been oh, I didn't how about Jana? Do you have a call to action? I'm sorry, I didn't.
Well, for me, it's always about, it starts with one. And it starts with me, it starts with you. And so it's the awareness of what's going on around you, what's been before you, what may be ahead of you. It's about thinking about it takes a village, and getting away from egocentric thinking, you know, that I'm the only one who can do it, that, you know, that's not true. And the reciprocity and symbiosis, that we all need each other. And that's how we will either survive or not. And if we can keep the positivity in our hearts and in our minds and in our heads, I think we can accomplish a lot, much more so than we can with gloom and doom. And, you know, that's not going to work. It's not going to solve any problem. So, but I just want to say I really enjoyed being with you again, Grandmother Shannon CrossBear. I should say great grandmother Shannon, and meeting Christopher and Arianna, and it's a joy to see how your family is together. You know, with the going away, you know, everything towards the nuclear family and away from the extended family generations. We've lost a lot, and so it's so pleasant to see when it works. So thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Jana. And well, I think this has been a really inspiring discussion. Thank you for being part of the 11 Days of Global Unity Summit. And it's all about we, right? Connection and community and all of that. So let's go from being a me society to a we society, right? That's why we have we.net. So together we can create a world that works for all. Jenna?
Thank you, Rick. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Christopher. Thank you, Arianna. And thank you all for watching us and for being a part of the 11 Days of Global Unity. Go to we.net to get involved. And don't forget to stick around for our public discussions right after this panel. And much love to you all. Bye-bye.
Thank you all. Bye-bye.